I know I might seem like an unlikely person to be up here talking to all of you guys about fusion. I'm not a scientist. My background is the intersection of new technologies and industrial projects as an investor and operator, and until pretty recently, I was a fusion skeptic in some ways. But then 2022 happened. Researchers up the road from where we are at Livermore National Lab demonstrated fusion ignition for the first time, and what had felt like a decades-long march started to feel a lot more like a global race. Here's a snapshot of the private fusion landscape as it stands today. We saw more than $4 billion deployed last year alone, a 10x increase over 2020. For those who want a quick primer on the science, fusion is what powers the sun, and it's conceptually really straightforward. You just need to squeeze light atoms together hard enough and for long enough that they fuse and release a lot of energy in the process. So why is this hard? To get these atoms to fuse on Earth, you have to drive them to really extreme conditions, sufficient temperature, density, and confinement time, and that is really, really tough to do on Earth. There are two main ways that people have been trying to do this: magnetic and inertial confinement. This is magnetic confinement, which, as you can see, people have been working on for a really long time, and it's been close to the scientific finish line for a couple of decades now. And this is inertial confinement, which entered the field more recently, but crossed the scientific finish line in 2022. And that concludes the physics portion of my talk on fusion. I mean, don't get me wrong, the science is table stakes, the physics has to work. And what we've seen in the last few years tells us that it will. The next big milestone for the field is something called net facility gain, where you build a big fusion machine and get more energy out of that entire machine than everything required to run it. And a bunch of companies are saying they're going to do this in the next few years. But we have a lot of energy generation technologies out there with no science risk. We've got solar and gas and fission and wind and all kinds of other things, and we still can't seem to build them fast enough to meet demand. Our energy problems aren't physics problems. These are infrastructure problems and deployment problems. And for fusion to matter as a power source, the fusion power plants that we build have to solve these problems too, or at least be designed for them, so that fusion systems can scale as fast as anything else out there. That's what I want to talk about today. But before I get there, I just want to spend a moment on the energy problems that need solving. We're in Palo Alto, so I imagine everyone's heard something about AI and knows that as AI scales, we're going to need a ton of data centers to do all of that computing. The first 5 gigawatt scale data centers should be online in the next year or so, and some models are saying that by 2035, 1 in 3 data centers will be a gigawatt or more. For context, a gigawatt basically powers the city of San Francisco today. And we now have the largest electric grid operator in the US, which serves about 1/5 of Americans, saying that we're looking at a 60 gigawatt shortfall in its service territory alone by 2035, which is more than all of California. So why are we looking at a shortfall? If we have all these energy technologies that work, why can't we just build them fast enough that this number is 0? Let's start with a bottleneck that affects every single power generation technology out there. This is the queue, all of the capacity waiting to connect to the US grid. We now have about twice the capacity in this queue as we have on the entire US grid. And for new projects looking to connect, we're looking at a wait time of about 5 years on average. And a lot of those projects that are sitting in this queue are waiting for planners to complete studies, and if those studies conclude that we need more transmission infrastructure, then those projects are often looking at another decade of delay, plus a lot more cost, so only about 20% of these projects are ever going to get built. There are also some constraints that are more specific to certain kinds of generation technologies. For example, solar and wind are awesome. There is no cheaper power than solar on a sunny day. But we all know that solar cannot by itself power a data center or a city in Minnesota in December. Gas provides a lot of the firm power in this country today, but it requires pipelines, and pipeline infrastructure is slow and expensive to expand. Nuclear fission is great, right? Firm power without pipeline infrastructure. But we have made traditional fission in this country so slow and expensive to build that we've only commissioned 3 new reactor sites since the 90s. These are awesome energy technologies, right? If you look around, everything we're doing is now powered by these technologies and some others, but we are still struggling to build them fast enough to meet demand. So what does this mean for fusion? It means that for fusion to matter as a power source, the fusion systems that we build have got to be reliable, like gas or fission, buildable, like solar and wind, and deployable on the infrastructure that we have. Let's start with reliability and ease of maintenance. And I hope you'll forgive me, I have a couple fairly obvious points to make here. But if we want fusion to provide 24/7 energy, we in the field have got to solve some hard but tractable engineering problems. For example, every single fusion power system out there is going to need survivable plasma-facing surfaces, affordable shielding for safe operations, and a sustainable tritium economy. And inertial systems are also going to need to make and insert low-cost fusion targets. The good news is that we can engineer solutions to these challenges. They're hard, but they're tractable. But we in the field can't defer them until after net facility gain. We need to start working on these now and showing progress against them now. Second, let's talk about buildability. Buildability in practice means modularity. If you want to build a big thing quickly and cost effectively, there is a substantial body of evidence showing that the best way to do that is to have that big thing consist of many identical building blocks. An Oxford study of more than 16,000 megaprojects found that modular projects, so big things that consist of many smaller units, can be built twice as fast and much more cheaply than their non-modular counterparts. And if you think about it, it makes intuitive sense, right? Iteration is learning, and the smaller the building block that you're iterating on, the faster you can learn and come down the cost curve, which in energy is everything. It's a commodity market. You have to win on cost. For fusion, I want to be very clear, this does not mean building small fusion power systems. That doesn't work. If someone tells you it does, don't listen. It just means building power systems that themselves consist of modular, mass manufacturable building blocks. Last but not least, let's talk about deployability. So that queue we looked at isn't something that fusion can solve alone. A lot of people are working on solving this problem. But we can design fusion power systems that are deployable on the infrastructure that we have. This is a map of the highest voltage transmission infrastructure in the US. And if you're building a really big generating unit, like 500 megawatts or more, you've got to be close to this infrastructure. Also, those really big units tend to be really expensive in terms of overnight capital costs, and so first-of-a-kind projects are harder to finance and slower to build. All of this blue stuff is transmission infrastructure of about 115 kV and above, and slightly smaller generating units, like in the 100 to 300 megawatt range, can leverage all of this infrastructure, which means that you can build them faster at lower cost and at lower risk on the infrastructure that we have. What does this mean for fusion? It means that if we want to design power systems that can scale, we need to build them such that they are cost competitive at unit sizes of 300 megawatts or less. The good news is that we can do this. We can design fusion systems that are buildable, reliable, deployable, and the global race to do this is happening now. I want to go back to 2022 for just a moment. Researchers about 45 miles from here at Livermore showed that net energy gain was possible. Do you want to know what the Chinese government started doing after that announcement? They started deploying tens of billions of dollars into big new fusion projects to take the next step. Here's one inertial fusion facility that they built just in the last couple of years, about 4 times the size of the National Ignition Facility. Do you want to know how many projects are being built by the US government in our country today like this? 0, yes. We have 0 publicly funded projects like this getting built. Everything big that's getting built here is being built by the private sector. So the country that proved that net energy gain is possible is investing way less in commercializing it than our global competitors. So what do we do about that? Fortunately, we have recently built the infrastructure required to scale transformative technology. I mean, look at AI. Countries and companies and investors did not wait to build out that infrastructure until the technology was fully mature, let alone profitable. We started building data centers, training talent, deploying capital way ahead of that curve, And we were so successful that we're now seeing energy as one of the limiting factors in that race. For fusion, it's time to do what we did for AI. This means, first, we need private fusion companies to design for scalability now and not defer those challenges until after net facility gain. Because if we do that, we're going to have missed the entire point. Second, we need governments to work with private industry to build the first generation of fusion power systems way faster than either could alone. And we have blueprints for this. I mean, look at what NASA COTS did for spaceflight. We just need to deploy them. We also will need financing models that are sized for the scale and ambition of this challenge, often as collaborations between private investors and power buyers. And, of course, we need voters to tell their leaders that they want to see us win in fusion, and we got to train thousands of people to actually get these things built. Is what I am proposing wildly ambitious? Sure, but ambition does not have to compromise discipline. A methodical, milestone-based approach will give us the tools we need to get this job done. And I mean, sure, American innovation has always been known for its boldness, but we also like to win. If we get this right, we're looking at a world where energy is not a bottleneck to prosperity, where economic progress is not coupled to climate change, and where energy security is a given. And if we wait or miss the moment, then China owns the world's most sophisticated energy technology and all of the strategic, economic, and military advantages that come with that. We get one shot to get this right. The science is getting there, and whether we win is now a question of how fast we build. Thank you.